Hi, today I will talk about a communication model I've used and refined over the past decade of working with children with special needs. It is based on the 9 essentials of the Anat-Baniel neuromovement method, and these are neuroplasticity principles necessary for the brain to function well. This video serves as a review for those of you who have started using this model and an introduction for those who are new to this approach. Here are 3 principles that you can use right away that capture the child's attention, help them become aware of themselves and their actions, and make them more focused, engaged, calmer, and happier. This two-way interactive communication model replaces the one-way model, which typically teaches the child by repeatedly prompting them to carry out specific actions. While children sometimes learn things to a certain degree in this way, it just takes months and sometimes years, and they become dependent on prompting to do anything. This is particularly unfortunate because prompting kills agency, which is the capacity to act independently and to make one's own choices, which is critical for happiness and a sense of worth and fulfillment. But the development of agency again requires awareness of oneself and one's environment. And that is what we are establishing with these neuroplasticity principles. And before I get to these principles, there's one thing that is important to understand. So children dealing with, children on the spectrum or children who have cerebral palsy have what is called a noisy brain. This is when their condition creates disruptions in the processing of sensory impressions and motor control, leading to sensory overload, disorientation, mental emotional dysregulation, and anxiety. And by the way, also often metabolic dysregulation. So there's also noise from the internal sensory afferences. So a noisy brain cannot easily make perceptual distinctions, and the ability to make distinctions is necessary for learning anything. So a noisy brain cannot learn well or cannot learn at all. The goal of using the neuroplasticity principles is to first and foremost connect with your child in any situation, regardless of their mental, emotional state, and to bring their attention to themselves and to what they are doing, and also express genuine interest in what they might be experiencing at that time, and keep them engaged in the moment. So that's a lot. So here are the 3 principles that will help you a lot to accomplish that. And that is the principle attention. How do I get the child's attention? Using the essential slow and use variation. And how do we use these principles? We do it by taking the time to replace a quick response, a quick prompt, with a series of skillfully expressed observations and questions that have the purpose to bring the child's attention to what is happening right now, because you may think they know what they're doing, but they're not. They are often disoriented. They're not clear. They're foggy. So bring the attention to what's happening. Then secondly, to slow down the interaction and allow you to become fully present with the child. And thirdly, help your child notice a difference, or in other words, help them to distinguish one thought from another, one action from another, noticing their feelings, and thereby enabling a reflective thinking process. And that is what ultimately gonna increase their cognitive ability. Now, I invite you to try this. When you find yourself in a challenging situation with your child, pause and ask yourself, what do I see my child doing right now? Take a moment to become present with yourself and your child before you act. Take a conscious breath and say out loud to your child what you perceive them doing at that moment, and word it with without judgment. Just make an observation. Then follow up with a question that expresses your genuine interest in your child's experience. Making a statement about what you see your child doing and linking it to a series of questions helps your child get mentally and emotionally unstuck, allowing them to become aware of themselves and to reflect. Here's an example. Your child has a meltdown. You could say, "Oh boy, you are crying loudly. I can hear how upset you are. I know you're upset because," and you say, if you know what your child is upset about, you can say that and say, "I'm sorry it makes you feel like this." And sometimes it's a situation where, it may be a transition or something they just don't want to do, but it has to happen. Let's say you pick them up from school, they still want to play, but you have to get home. There are tons of these kind of situations. So first is to connect by noticing, stating to them, "Wow, I see you upset. And I know you're upset about this, but we still have to get home," for example. And then it shows some compassion. "I'm sorry you feel like this. I'm sorry it makes you feel like this." Or if you're not sure why your child is upset, you could say, "I wonder what made you so upset. I wonder." Expressing, "I'm interested in understanding what's going on with you. How does it feel to scream so loud?" And then give them permission, say, "If you need to, you can cry louder." Can you cry louder? What am I doing now? I trying to create a distinction between crying loud and crying louder. So I give them permission to express even more of their upset, crying louder, but my idea is really to create a variation so they can notice what they are doing by changing it a little bit. And then, either they just continue or they do cry louder and say, "I wonder how it would be if you cried a little less loud. Can you do that? Cry a little less loud? How does it feel to cry less loudly? And oh, how about you cry louder again? And then louder. And now quieter. How does it feel?" And then finally, so sometimes, or often what I see happening, this is a different response, and your child will take notice. They may stop crying altogether right away. And then you can ask, do you want to be upset or do you want to be calm? And of course, nobody wants to be upset. It's just it overcomes us, it overcomes them, and it's kind of an out of control situation. So it may happen that your child starts to smile. I had that happening with children. They start to smile because it's an unexpected response, on your part, or they even laugh. This is just one example, and it's just something that I invite you to try and find out if it works. I can give you another example from my practice with a child on the spectrum. So the child comes in and asks me the same question they already asked me many times before, and it's just the thing they do when they see me. And instead of answering them, because I know actually they know the answer anyways, it's a compulsory thing they do, I exclaim with surprise, "Oh, I thought you asked me that when you were here last time. And I think I answered." And then I pause and I say it exactly in this way. It's very slow. I act as if I'm thinking about it. Maybe I forgot. So I use now the essential slowing down. I slow them down. I don't give them a quick answer or say, "You know that," or "Stop asking me that," or give them the answer and then they go off to the next thing. No, I'm now slowing them down and engaging them with what they ask about. And then I pause and take a breath and I add, "Do you remember that?" And sometimes they give the answer themselves right then, or they look at me and I continue, "Well, maybe you forgot. Not a problem. I tell you what," and I still don't give them the answer. I say, "How about you guess? Because I think you know it, but how about you guess?" I give you 3 guesses. And if you don't guess it by the 3rd time, I'll remind you. Now, by then, usually they say it. And And if they don't, I kind of get silly with this. So I give them, well, do you think it's this or that? And I give like kind of outrageous possibilities, kind of silly things. And that it keeps them engaged. Sometimes I may have to make contact, hold their hands. If they want to just walk off, I don't let them walk off, but I don't go after them. I bring them back to me and say, hey, or they maybe sometimes they ask the next question, a different question, and then I say, well, wait a minute. You just asked me this. We were still trying to find the answer to this question. Let's answer this question, and then you can ask me the next question. So in this way, I keep their brain engaged in what they initiated. I don't let them run off to the next thing, because that's what happens with, particularly with children with on the spectrum. They just go off from one thing to another, to another, to another. And so I've seen this work really well. Sometimes they just walk off, and then, picking up objects and putting it down and going to the next thing and the next thing, and they never spend more than a few seconds with anything. And in that case, I may hold their hands. I would suggest you also do that at home. Hold their hands, maybe put your hands on their shoulders, try to be in front of them, but not imposing, but trying to make eye contact, even if they look a little bit not directly at you, but to the side, that's okay. In that case, they still hear you. And yeah, try that, because when you just repeatedly answer their question, it actually feeds into their compulsion. And telling them to stop, or even worse, to combine the request to stop with a negative consequence, signals the child that they're doing something wrong, and they really don't, right? And it hurts their sense of worthiness and neglects their intelligence. I give you one more example of a bedtime routine. So rather than prompting the child, and that could be also a child with cerebral palsy, where due to their spasticity, it's difficult for them to do things, and you just do things for them, or you prompt them through the process of doing things that you try to teach them to do. You give a preview and say, 8 o'clock is bedtime. And in half hour, I will remind you to go to your room and get ready for bed. Now, remember to not call that across the room or worse, across the house, but to be close to your child. So, because when you're further away, they may actually you're not in their awareness. They may not notice it. They may not hear what you say. And then you may offer them a visual support. You could say, if you know that your child is doing better with a visual support, you could say, hey, would you like to set the time timer so you're ready to stop when it's time for bed? And then depending on, if you have a nonverbal child, they may not be clear with their response, but you can say, hey, let's do that, or I'll set the timer for you, okay? And then when the time comes, 5 to 10 minutes before the time comes, you give them one more reminder. You say, it's almost time. You have now 10 more minutes before it's bedtime. And then at the time of the transition, you repeat it once again. It's 8 o'clock now, time to get ready for bed. And here's this, what is different. You say, I wonder, instead of now prompting them through a process of actions to get ready for bed, you say, I wonder if you remember what you do every night before you go to sleep. And then you pause for a moment, look at them. And if your child doesn't do anything or starts to walk off, again, make a body contact and say, I think you know, but I don't mind reminding you. And then tell them the actions sequentially. And now you may say, oh, but my child cannot do it. I can only give him one prompt at that time. So again, I'm inviting you to try a different process, and it has a lot to do with review and setting an expectation. So you tell them, you do this, maybe you go to your room, you take off your clothes, then you put on your pajamas, and then you can say, do you remember that? Put on your pajamas, right? What do you do after you put on your pajamas? The child just looks at you or looks over here. You say, well, after you put on your pajamas, you usually go, pause for a moment, to the bathroom, and then you brush your teeth, right? And I don't know what you do. So you basically tell them that slowly, with pauses, asking, do you remember? And then once you've done all that, you say, and again, you can do that also with nonverbal children. Then you say, now go ahead and get started, and I will come a little later, and if you need help, I help you. But I'm really, and here comes again. Then you say, but I'm really curious how you do it yourself. This is an empowerment statement. I am really curious to see how you do it yourself. And when you speak in this manner, what's different is that you assume competency in your child. You assume ability. It means you assume your child is capable regardless of your previous experience. You put the history aside and you decide to have a different expectation today. You choose to believe that your child is intelligent, understands what you say, and wants to cooperate. This empowers your child. And the reason why I'm telling you this, the reason why I'm making this video is because I've seen it so many times. I've coached parents to do it. And in the most cases, the outcome is stunning and surprising, and it works. So I gave you 3 examples. In the future, I give more examples. But start here with these 3 principles. These are principles of neuroplasticity. Actually, I come to this now. I'm going to summarize for you why this works. Questions engage thinking, prompts don't. And these are not the questions that ask for a specific answer. That's really important. This is a different way of asking questions. These are questions that give suggestions, that don't ask for a specific response, for a specific answer, and it's right or wrong. And when it's wrong, you correct it. These are open questions. They want to engage the brain to notice something, to think, to become aware. So questions that engage thinking. Prompts don't do that. The pauses give your child time to hear you and process what you say. Notice what they do. Notice what they feel. Notice what they think, because they have thoughts. They're just often disorganized. When you issue prompts repeatedly, it usually happens in fast succession. Every few seconds, you prompt them again or repeat the same observation. Constant repetitive talking can overwhelm the child. It can lead to more confusion, can increase dysregulation and resistance. This approach of asking questions and using these principles of attention, slow, and variation slows everybody down and allows time to notice and allows you time to respond more skillfully. I invite you to adopt a mindset for success by reminding yourself every day that this is not about being perfect, it's about making progress. This is about starting a new process of refinement, knowing that each time you avoid prompting and connect with your child is an approximation. And that leads to, it's only an approximation, but it's important and it's good enough. And it leads to the next approximation on your journey to mastery. This new approach of interacting with your child also upgrades your brain, and you become a more skillful and compassionate leader for your child. So keep an open mind, let go of the negative storyline, how your child is and how difficult it is and what they cannot do and what you hope they would do, and just become genuinely interested and curious about your child and become playful, at least sometimes. And you will see your child become calmer and happier and express more of who they truly are, non-verbally and verbally. You become more relaxed and happier. The entire family atmosphere transforms. And that is what I want for you. That's what I want for your child and for your whole family. To move away from this constant stress mode and find more peace and joy. So please start the process. Have some fun with it. Do it as an experiment. I wonder what happens when I do this. This is different. Let me try it. I look forward to hearing from you what you observe about your child and about yourself. And don't hesitate to contact me. You can always ask me a question. I have parents ask me questions. Sometimes they say, I tried this, but this is what happened. I often invite parents to, when you have a challenging situation, take your phone out, videotape it so that I can see your child and I can hear what you say and what your child does or vocalizes. And I can tell you from my experience, every single time a parent sends me a video, I spot instantly at least one thing that goes completely against the brain. And I see exactly why it doesn't work. Then I make a suggestion, they try it, and it works. And that's why I'm here talking, because I know it works. So please don't hesitate to contact me. You can text me 510-480-9580. You can also schedule a coaching sessions. We do that on Zoom. Some of you know that. Others who haven't been around for a while, you may not know it or may have forgotten it. So take advantage of the services that COPEC offers. And I'm really curious if this works for you. If you actually do it, try it, and it works for you, please let me know. I love to hear your stories. Take care.